Welcome to the Vacation Races and Friends podcast, a podcast about events, travel, and the people who love both. Find more episodes at vacationraces.com.
Despite what our screen says, I am the Hanna Bowens. Hannah Bowens. There's only one of us, and that's me.
She has no proof of that.
It's true. I can only have one video.
That's true. Well, you'll have to take my word for it, my audio. This is Hanna Bowens speaking, the one and only, and joined by my sister.
Yes, her bratty younger sister, Emily Bowens.
Love it.
And I don't know if it's your microphone that's maybe rubbing against your sweatshirt, but I am hearing a little bit of like crinkling.
That would be, yes, either that or my secret bag of chips that is not in the frame.
Either one is great. I have my
Either
secret coffee, which will probably make noise on the audio too, so I'm good.
Okay, great.
But thanks for the heads up.
And yeah, you guys were traveling from your hometown of Chicago to LA to come back to where Hanna lives.
Yes.
And remind me why. I know it was like towards quarantine. I don't know if I can't remember if you were just trying to be by family or if there was like a reason you needed to get home.
Yeah, the reason I left where I live in LA for my family's house in Chicago was exactly as you said it. Like, there's no real sugarcoating it. I was very lonely and very bored and very homesick, I guess, for people and like physical interactions. So I drove my car. I have my uncle's old Jeep. I drove it to Chicago at the end of June. Mm-hmm. And I stayed there until late August, which was really nice. And Emily was kind enough to accompany me for the ride back to LA.
Right.
She always phrases it like that, like was kind enough to go on a cross-country road trip out west with me. Like, I'm the lucky one here. Yeah. And I had a time off from work. So I was like, well, let's get to it. Like, we've been, cooped up for so long. Let's get some open spaces.
For sure.
As the chicks would say, the now chicks.
Drop the chicks.
Okay, I love that.
Wide open spaces.
Oh, that's going to be stuck in my head all day now. But thank you. It's a great song.
You're welcome.
So yeah, normally, Hanna, you would have flown, but obviously that's just not an option right now.
Not an option.
Wasn't at the time.
No, I was very scared of flying, and that was like so scared that I chose to drive alone and like sleep in my car.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if airplanes and hotels were safe. Back in June, there's still a lot that we don't know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
About coronavirus and how it spread and all of that, but even less so at the time. So it was like, that just seemed like the safest option.
Yeah. Well, and I think for people, it still feels that way. We sent out a survey to our runners this week asking, just checking in. We've sent it a few times asking how they're feeling about COVID to travel and stuff. And it's still kind of 50-50. Like, people are getting more comfortable with planes, but yeah, I mean, if people can drive, that seems to be what they choose to do. But of course, then you're kind of limited by distance unless you're willing to kind of do this awesome thing that you guys did.
Yeah, if you've got the time, which I also was really fortunate that I was in between work projects. Yeah. So I did have some time to do it. If I had been working a regular job, that would have been a different story altogether. But
of course.
And I know that people are getting a little more comfortable, which will be interesting to see over the holidays coming up. Like right now it's almost November, and I'm really curious to see like how many people are flying around the holidays, and if that's gonna affect like the number of cases or anything.
What are your plans for the holidays? I mean, I was just thinking about this the other day. People who would normally fly back for the holidays, I don't know if they're planning to do it anyway or trying to figure out another solution.
I've been thinking about that a lot. I'm right now, and this is totally subject to change, but I'm planning to go back to Chicago again.
Okay.
And ideally I could do that. I'd be flying this time. My car, I think, had its last big hurrah coming back from Chicago. So my plan would be to fly, and I'm hoping I can do that if my schedule allows, like on a random, like Tuesday or Wednesday, super early morning in the middle of or in the beginning of December. So hopefully it won't be like a super crowded time. That's what I'm aiming for. Definitely just want to avoid like a holiday rush. So
because even if it's been safe right now, like I've had some coworkers who went to Alaska a few months ago, and their experience was great. They were like, oh, we felt safe. We felt like, it was annoying having to wear the mask all the time, but like it was totally doable. But yeah, around the holidays, I'm just going, how on earth are they going to manage the holidays? Because it's a lot of travel that people are used to doing then.
Well, and Emily actually flew, like, so she drove with me to LA, and she flew back to Chicago.
Yeah, how was that, Emily?
It was quite an experience. I went from being on the beach with Hannah when LA was going through its like heat wave. So I finally got into the airport, and I had my mask as well as a face shield that my mom had sent me with.
Yeah.
So, we made sure that like I took my COVID test before I got on the flight to make sure, I was negative before I did any type of traveling. And then I, traveling itself was fine. I was on Southwest where they put an empty seat in between.
Good.
Like everybody. So that felt good to like, I kind of have the space, as well as like, as soon as I got back, I just like kind of quarantined for about 6 days in my little tiny room here, and got tested again. And so it felt fine. Like I didn't take my mask or face shield off once. And I think I just was like enjoying the space between the empty space between me and my fellow traveler.
I mean, I can't remember the last time that happened to me. So yeah, that appeals.
Right.
Yeah. And everyone did, like, you couldn't get on the plane without a mask or anything like that. They still, I think, were maybe just passing out waters, and like that was it. So there was like very little interaction with anybody. So it felt pretty safe.
That's good. I mean, just did it feel laterally safe, or did you feel safer driving and camping?
That's such a good question, Robin, because there's so many
there's so many elements
other
of camping.
factors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
True.
Like both me driving back alone to Chicago presented like its own set of risks, and also Emily and I traveling back to LA together and like driving through just really big open kind of like middle of the country stretches where there's not a lot around. And one night we camped, this was in Oregon actually, and we heard bears like while we were camping, and they were growling and getting closer. So we, like that night, we ditched our tent and slept in the car. So I guess each one poses its own set of risks.
True.
That's fair. It's like, are you scared of COVID or are you scared of like the general hazards of camping?
Yeah. Well, and I guess the COVID stuff too was definitely present like throughout the whole drive. Like every time we went to a gas station, every time we stopped for food, it was, you could really, and I imagine anybody who's done a little bit of road travel could probably speak to this experience too. But you can kind of get a sense of like where you are based on if people are wearing masks.
Yeah.
Like at the gas stations or the restaurants where you're stopping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've gone to Utah a couple times since then. And I was worried about making my usual pit stop outside of Vegas. And it ended up being fine, which was good. People were wearing masks. You know, obviously it was a little bit more high traffic, but that was like my one big risk on the trip. But you can, I don't know, I feel like you can just feel that tension when you're stopping in those places.
Yeah.
Right. Like we were doing as best as we could to just like, you know, protect ourselves. And of course we're doing it for other people around us, but
not trying
you know, we're always wearing like our masks. We had a nice supply of like hand sanitizer or wipes and things like that. So definitely we tried to like our best and we're very aware. But I do think that like traveling in our car and then sleeping in the tent was like a really nice, I don't know, just put like my mind at ease about that stuff rather than having to have stayed in a hotel or
even at someone's house that, you know, like
that's true.
It can be stressful, you know? And the plane too. I'm really glad that planes, it seems like people who have gone on planes have been happy with the experience, which makes me feel happy because I really miss travel. I still feel nervous about getting on one, but I'm hoping that we figure out some solutions there. Okay, so I know that when you started out, someone told you about Airbnb, right? Wait, not Airbnb. Hip
I know.
I was like, that's not the right one.
I also confuse it a lot with Hipmunk, which is like cheap airline search website. But Hip Camp. And yes, actually a friend of mine, shout out to Annie, told me about Hip Camp maybe like 2 days before Emily and I left Chicago.
That's awesome.
And it was a like true gift because I am a procrastinator and like was just at that point starting to look up like campgrounds and campsites to make some reservations. And you know, this is just this just speaks to my like lack of forethought, but I didn't register that like so many people were doing road trips and like visiting national parks because there's not really anything to do during COVID except go outside and travel by car. So all of the national parks, all the state parks were like totally booked up and reserved. So I was starting to panic a little bit, and then my friend said, "Oh, have you tried Hip Camp? It's like Airbnb for campsites." And that ended up being, we used that pretty much every night of the trip except for maybe like 2 nights where
you had different setup or
like one night we camped in a family friend's backyard in Northern California, and another night this was the night that we heard the bears. We just failed to make a reservation on time and kind of opted for the more spontaneous route.
It got a little dark quick. We either had to, this was very close to Crater Lake, so around there was a lot of, you know, campsites available for like RVs and, you know, people who are going to be staying around that area for a while. So of course we didn't have a reservation there, and Hip Camp seemed to be a bit out of the way, like past a certain point. So we weren't sure if we wanted to go the long haul just cross your fingers for a nice campsite, or I mean, we were trying everything that night. Like asking the motels, pulling up to any like of the roadside campgrounds. And then luckily someone pointed us in the direction of like a national park campground. So yeah, and it definitely gave us a nice story to tell with you know, running into some nature, some wildlife just outside the tent.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that would totally freak me out. The one time I've seen like a bear on the side of the road, I was like hiding behind the car. It was so far away.
Yeah. Well, and I am somebody who I just take a lot of comfort in knowing like a full day in advance, like where we're going to stop, and knowing that we have a reservation, which I will say Hip Camp was great for last minute bookings. Like we would look up at 2:00 in the afternoon, like search the area where we thought we wanted to end up, you know, at sunset or whatever. And we're almost always able to find and book a spot just like that with that short of notice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I think by that point in the trip, like 4 nights in, I had kind of leaned into like, oh, this like spontaneous, like it's all going to work out. It's all worked out so far. I'm not going to stress about the fact that it's 5 p.m. and we still don't know where we're stopping. It'll be fine. Like we'll find a spot. And then in those hours of driving around in pitch black,
just asking for places to
asking, like pulling up to every like motel that had like a campground site, and then finally finding this place that took us like miles deep into the woods where it's like pitch black. We have no service, and I'm just thinking, you know, like if we die here, no one is gonna know where to find us.
It's gonna take so long to find you.
And I learned my lesson that night, which is I'm not the spontaneous.
You can be spontaneous up to a point.
Up to a point, exactly.
Up to
and I learned my threshold that night. Yeah.
That's great. You learned your boundaries. So it was probably in is Crater Lake a national park? I think so.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So is that the one that you guys were in?
Yeah, it was like a little oh my gosh, I feel like it was called something like Rogers, or I think it was a state park kind of on the outskirts of Crater Lake.
Yeah. But it does sound like you sort of were booking as you went. You didn't really have like a plan mapped out.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, other than just knowing like initially what route we wanted to do, like coming from Chicago, we knew we wanted to go the northern route, and we kind of picked what states we wanted to do. But even that kind of changed as we were going along. I think we had hopes of going through Montana, but then we literally ran into the point where like the highway was like gonna take us just hours out of the way to get through Montana, or just like, I don't know. So we ended up like changing our route.
Yeah.
That was at the Tetons. We
right.
to like split where either you go north to Montana or south to Idaho.
Yeah.
And we made the call to save Yellowstone and Montana for another time.
Well, they're so big. That's the thing. It would have the route would have taken a long time, and then like the time to see the stuff you wanted to see would have taken a long time.
That's when it hits you, the difference between like looking at a map on your phone or like on your computer and just like, oh, we'll just like pop up to Montana, and then realize that little like hop, skip, and a jump is actually like
3 or 4
600 miles.
Oh yeah,
of a detour. So,
well, and that drive through Idaho is really pretty. I think
it was like a surprise
really gem.
Yeah, Idaho,
like
underrated.
Eastern part of the state. Yeah.
And I forget, I forget that Chicago is so far north.
Yeah.
Because when you said you were in Oregon, I was like, Oregon? Because I'm thinking like Kansas level, but that's not right. That's a gorgeous place to go through. Did you end up, I feel like you guys told me you ended up spending some time in a park. Was it Grand Teton?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's my favorite park. What did you guys think?
Oh, I love the Teton.
Yeah, I mean, it was gorgeous. And I was just about to say that. Go ahead, Hannah.
I want to hear.
We were almost at the base of the Tetons and still could not fully, there was still issued visibility.
God.
Like we couldn't see them because of the smoke from the California fires. That actually we started to see as far back east as Wyoming.
God.
Which that was a wild thing that was really like present from Wyoming on. Was
right. And like very far east of Wyoming. I'm pretty sure we were only just, I don't even know if we were an hour across the border, and we were already seeing that like haziness where, you know, you can basically look at the sun without like pulling away. Not that you should do that.
No. But it's crazy that it got to that point. And honestly, I had forgotten about that part. I also did a trip around that time, and I remember driving like some point on my way to Vegas, like realizing that I was out of it, and then driving back and like seeing it as you drive into it.
Yeah.
Like, that's bizarre.
So the Tetons were absolutely amazing, but it was just incredible at the same time to be like, oh, whoa, there they are. Like we were just, like Hannah was saying, we had to get really close to them to kind of get their, you know, full effect. And so that was a very interesting part of our road trip as well, especially when we got to California.
Yeah, I'm sure. This is, I hope I'm not dragging this on too long. I'd like it if you guys just walk me through the different locations and what you liked and didn't like about the campsites.
Yeah. I made a little list just before we hopped on the call because I wanted to.
Okay, I pulled up my Instagram because I used that as my
Emily took a really good
diary
record.
Yeah.
She was documenting each stop, so actually her list is probably even more accurate. But I mean, what the day we left Chicago, we crossed through Illinois, Wisconsin, and ended up camping the first night in South Dakota.
So also Minnesota. We went all the way through Minnesota.
Oh yeah, Minnesota too. Yeah, we made a dent the first day.
Yeah,
because our first. Oh no, I was just going to say because I think that was our first location that we had, and maybe our only location that we had set up a campsite the day before. So we like had our destination, and we knew we wanted to kind of get that like Midwest chunk out of the way.
Yeah, totally get that.
No shade to Wisconsin or Minnesota. They were both beautiful.
No, we love those states.
Of course, there are just stretches of fields in certain states that are less notable.
So this is also, I think, a point where we should probably come clean about the fact that about our level of like camping. We did sleep in a tent, and we like, you know, we set up the tent, slept on the ground, blew up our little sleeping pads. But every time that we set up our tent, we would go into the nearest town and like eat dinner and grab like
go to a brewery,
drink, like
grab a margarita.
A level of like glamping.
Yeah.
So we were not like cooking our food over an open fire or anything like that. I feel like that's important to mention.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot of work for places you were only staying for one night.
It would have been a lot of work, and we wanted to contribute to the local,
of course,
economies.
Yes,
so noble.
Out here exposing us, but we're really doing the town's So much good.
Those were big margaritas that we had the first night in South Dakota. And I like to think we did our part by supporting that restaurant.
We may have been the only ones wearing a mask, and we may have been laughed at for it.
Oh no.
But I do not regret that stop at that wonderful Mexican restaurant.
And the margarita helps too.
Of course.
Plus, where else are we going to charge?
Yeah, that was our other
yeah.
to paint a full picture is like picturing us at any outdoor restaurant patio and like 4 or 5 different electronics like plugged into the nearest outlet. So
yes, we're charging the portable charger and the phones and like anything you could think of is in the wall while we are eating.
And for anybody listening who is upset about that or like challenges the fact of whether or not what we did was camping, I just want to say like I understand, but you know,
I don't think you're as far off as you think.
Okay.
I think it's just different levels for different people, but I was about to say like, oh, this is actually cool because this, you know, is another method of travel for the holidays, but I imagine this all would have been very different in cold weather.
Oh my gosh, I
can only imagine.
Yeah.
Like wouldn't be possible. I don't know how do people camp in tents in the snow?
Yes, but like it's special snow camping. Like I mean, they have special equipment for it, and it's usually like for the experience of that, because like trying to get from point A to point B, you know.
Yes. Okay. Wait. And this is kind of it. I've been like thinking about this since I, you know, knew we were going to be like chatting with you on the podcast. But like when I think of how we, you know, camp in full quotations for listeners, but I thought of like the way we were going about it was like we were getting from Chicago to LA and it was a road trip. So we wanted to like kind of see specific things and check out other places where I know that people who are going like full blown camping and have equipment and probably way better knowledge and experience than we do, you might set up for like a day or 2 or 3 or like depending on how long you'll be there. And like that is true, you know, camping.
Yeah, sure.
Getting down and dirty with it. Yes, we may have only been on the road a week, but yeah, we were really just like sleeping places, you know, checking out the, like Hannah was saying, like the nearest town. And then we'd kind of have like a day visit somewhere, whether that be like the Badlands or Crater Lake or, you know, stopping here and there throughout the Tetons. But yeah, so ours was very much like of picking it up and going.
Yeah.
Well, it was a tour, you know, throw the tent down and wrap it up. A tour, yes.
Yeah. Well, and again, the camping was more a means to an end. Like if you had been doing this in a different time, you would have been stopping at cheap motels, I assume, or at like people that you knew.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Totally.
No, I think it's awesome. Did you share a tent? It sounds like you shared a tent.
We sure did.
Yeah, you didn't have your own individual.
No, we shared a tent, and it was a perfect size. Actually, it was a 2-person tent, and we got very good at setting it up in record time, which was kind of fun. We actually set a timer each night when we were setting up the tent, just to see if we were improving.
Oh, nice.
And sometimes like the elements were a little.
Oh, sure.
Do you remember our best time, Emily?
It was like 4 minutes, 17
4
seconds.
4.5 minutes or something.
Damn.
Yeah, it was.
Did you know, sometimes write those down?
I took screenshots, but I could dig those up right now, I suppose.
But yeah, the elements, Hannah, like you're saying, were for sure playing a role in how quickly we got it done.
What would you say is the most challenging element?
4:37.
Oh, 4:37.
That was our fastest time.
Okay, that's quick.
Yeah, that was in
That's definitely fast.
Wyoming.
The first time I went camping in a long time, several years back, I needed my like 10-year-old cousin to help me set it up. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah. And do you know, the hardest part always is it's easy to, set up the poles and then put them, like crisscross them, but just there's so much, the two ends are so far apart that it's like you couldn't do that alone, like bringing them closer together to actually like raise the tent. Like I'd be curious. I've never had a one person tent, but I've thought about that before, like if that's
right.
the same method for setting those up, because that seems hard.
Because we did have a night in Wyoming where not our record time Wyoming, but we were on this is when we were staying at Peace of Heaven, as in like PEACE, Peace of Heaven. It was really cute.
The names are very fun of all these campsites.
So cute. But it was a very big open field, and we were running into a lot of like wind trouble.
Yeah.
So the wind was like really blowing, and so that time was for sure our longest. I think we couldn't get anything to stay or down. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I couldn't imagine doing it alone.
No. Like putting it on is stressful because it's blowing the material, and then once it's on, like trying to make sure it's staked down. It's the wind. Wind is my least favorite.
But we definitely were rewarded that following morning because we woke up. We arrived when it was already dark, like pretty much pitch black. So we're setting up using the headlights. But when we woke up that next morning, we realized we were just like 20 feet from the neighboring farm, and there were like 3 horses just like staring at us. It was so cute to wake up to that.
Yeah, it was so sweet.
Is that the one where you had the picture where you had the silo in the background?
That was the first night.
Oh, that was the first night.
Okay, yeah. So maybe we should get back on track.
Oh yeah, let's get back on track.
You're good.
Okay,
I love this
back on the road. We've gone through Wisconsin, Minnesota, and we just crossed over into South Dakota. And this was our one night that we did have that plan stopped, and that is where we had the silo.
Yeah. Cherry Rock Farms.
Cherry Rock Farms. Isn't that so sweet?
That's so cute.
And I would highly recommend this spot if anyone was just looking for a quick night to stay there like we did. Or, I mean, it was just like really pretty. There were like set campgrounds, and like seems like you could have neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be like a fun little spot. But yeah, we had a sweet like silo behind us, and we were by a creek. We had just pulled in at like during a really amazing sunset. I don't know if you remember that, Hannah, but that was it just, I feel like as short as our stay was in Cherry Rock Farms, it was just like it just left the sweetest little imprint on me. Like it was a really nice first night to our trip.
Love that. Real quick, I want to hear the rest of them too, but did you end up having any neighbors or other people camping at these places, or more often than not were you the only one?
We, like that campsite, there were maybe 2 other people on the property, not anywhere like very close to us, but I would say most of the other spots it was just us in the tent, and sometimes there were a lot of times we were on the same property as like an RV park, and it seemed like there were a lot of RVs and trailers everywhere we went. Though I don't remember like encountering a ton of tent campers.
Well, I heard when the state shelter-in-place orders and stuff first happened, apparently the RV business
booming.
Spike, which is crazy. You couldn't possibly have predicted that.
Yeah, people took the roads like, and if you've got like a trailer or something like that, like that's ideal. It's your own little house on wheels, good to go.
And I think at the time, even camping felt more exposed. I think that's probably less now because, you know, open air seems to be where people feel the safest.
Mm-hmm.
So there was at least one time I know that you guys got to your hip camp and then sort of had to pivot and make an adjustment at the last minute. Was that the only time it happened?
Yes.
So most of the time it was safe and lovely and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like wonderful, lucky experiences.
And this particular one, this was a place that we had booked very like with very short notice. And to be totally honest, I didn't have the greatest service at the time, so I couldn't actually see the photos of the campsite when I booked it. I could see some of the reviews saying something like the grass in the photo is not accurate anymore. So I sort of had like a hunch that maybe this of what we were expecting. But I've thought about this since, because we did end up making the decision to not stay there, and we ended up driving another hour through Idaho and crossing into Oregon to stay somewhere else that night, which ended up being like a really lovely spot. I'm glad we did it. But at the time, I think you just kind of get into like I don't know, this certain like mode where we're like two females traveling on our own, and we just like didn't get a great vibe from this place. It was pretty much like a dirt parking lot, and there were like tons of flies, and I knew we could, you know, it wouldn't be the most comfortable, but you know, we would probably be fine. And we just made the decision like it was worth it to us to, I think we might have paid like $10 or $15 for that spot. And I was like, that's not enough for me to justify staying here. Like one more drive, one more hour on the road feels like a small price to pay for just
peace of mind,
comfort, peace of mind, a little more security,
a better night's sleep, and just getting back up and like ready to drive again in the morning. So.
But it sounds like it was prettier, which is rad.
It was beautiful.
Oh, it was gorgeous. And we had a wonderful host family that like every single member of the family like came out to greet us and, you know, introduced us to their pets, like which I really enjoyed. It was a really sweet family and just a really great view. So that was, we had just crossed the border into Oregon from there.
Well, it sounds like that's reassuring, because it sounds like it was sort of extenuating circumstances that even got you to the shadier place. And even then you were able to adjust fairly easily. So that brings a lot of peace of mind to me if I was thinking about doing that, because, you know, I have a hard time adjusting. And can you adjust that quickly? And
totally. And Robin, we had like extensive conversations about that. We showed up to the site that we ended up leaving, decided, you know, before we put our tent down and like set up camp here tonight, let's go get food. We can like talk about it over dinner, get something to eat, and then decide if we want to come back or keep going. And it was really interesting having that conversation where we couldn't figure out if we were trying to figure out like gut instinct versus like, are we being overly cautious, or like, is it, do we need to message this host and like tell them we're not coming? Like, is that rude? Are we being rude, or are we being safe? And like, absolutely, I think we made the right choice, and I have no regrets. I don't feel bad about choosing safety over like
Oh, yeah.
Appropriate
or etiquette.
Yeah, absolutely. But it definitely took a little bit of conversation about that to process those feelings.
Yeah, and we weren't sure either, just based on our, recent and previous experiences at the other hip camp places, that did we just luck out at these amazing places before, and this is what most of the hip camp experience is. But after going to the next place too, I think we realized okay, maybe that isn't the ideal um camping experience. I know that we weren't in an RV or we needed to have any kind of plug in. It was just us, our Jeep, and the tent, so we don't take up a lot of space, and we didn't need showers or things like that. Well, maybe we needed them, but
the pros of traveling with your sister.
Right.
Exactly. We didn't care. So I think we were just questioning that too. Is this a normal, is this a normal camp place?
Right. Are we just being spoiled?
Or did we just have, exactly, some really great experiences?
Yeah. No, and that's hard to know at the top.
Yeah. And I'm sure that campsite was and has been totally enough for people. And, and that's great.
I think they were just currently doing work on it when we had gotten there. So maybe not in its best form at that time.
Sure. If you went back in a year, it might be totally different.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like that you had the flexibility and the means to do that, because I know a lot of people could feel stuck in that situation.
Absolutely. If we weren't able to find another spot nearby, or if we had put the last of our financial resources into that spot and didn't really have another option, that would have been a different story. So I'm also very grateful that we were able to have some flexibility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What would you say? So was the place in Oregon with the family and the pets, was that the best place you stayed? What would you say is your favorite place that you stayed? Hip camp or no?
Good question.
I mean, it's a good sign if it's hard to narrow it down.
I think it's a really good sign if it's hard to narrow it down. Two things kind of popped to my mind. That first night in Wyoming, yes, that was amazing and windy, but we didn't even put our rain cover on.
Yeah.
So we fell asleep under the stars. And
amazing.
Although it was windy, it was warm wind. And I don't know if I've really experienced much of warm wind before. Maybe that's just being from Chicago and the wind is very cold, but it felt like an actual summer breeze, and that was just such a new feeling to me. I think I just was this is bliss. I don't know. And of course Hannah said the morning waking up with the horses, that's just awesome.
That's pretty magical.
Yeah,
it really was. I think that's exactly how it was feeling to me. It's something totally new. And I think that also was a similar experience that I had when we stayed in the place just outside of Crater Lake.
Yeah.
Although we were, really scrambling, and it was late, dark, we lost service. Yes, we heard some bears move to the car, but during that quick few steps running to the car, I've never seen stars like that ever. I just remember turning to Hannah being just look up really fast before we get in the car. It's unbelievable.
If that was gonna be our last night, it was a good view.
It was nothing I've ever seen before, so
you would
have been happy. Totally. But although we went to bed very nervous a little bit, the morning we had a fellow camper nearby just so kindly was before you girls take off, go check out the creek right over there. And so we walked back through some trees, and there was like an unbelievable crystal clear, like more so lake, or
Oh,
maybe
wow.
the beginning
like
of a
a-
river, I think.
Yeah, it was like a little reservoir that actually he said was the source of this very like windy, snaky river that flowed like south out of the Crater Lake area
Cool.
towards oh my gosh, is it Kalmouth Falls or
Yeah, I think so.
I should look this up so I don't get it wrong.
And that's where you had your amazing scones.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh my god, yeah, it was the best scone I've ever had. And I'm obsessed with
High praise.
scones. Yeah. It's
So that was a very, another surprising, it's amazing what just a little bit of daylight can do to
Oh, for
change a
sure.
place for you.
it was
For sure.
Jackson Kimball State Recreation Site was where we ended up
Oh, okay.
Yes.
camping. And it was on the way to Klamath Falls, not Kalmouth.
Klamath. Okay.
Klamath. Yes.
Yeah. And Hannah, do you have in front of you the name of that bakery?
Oh, I remember the name of the bakery.
Oh my God. Unbelievable if they deliver.
Okay, so it actually, I am going to look it up just to make sure I get it right. But this place was, after that long night and not getting the best sleep because of it, it was called Green Blade Bakery.
Green Blade Bakery.
Yeah, in like downtown.
Sorry, Green Glade?
Blade.
Green Blade. Okay.
Blade.
They had like
Unbelievable.
11 different kinds of scones.
Oh, damn.
I know.
That's a lot.
It's amazing.
And that was just their scone selection. I mean, they had everything.
Yeah.
I think we went in twice.
We did. I bought 2 scones and then bought another one for the road.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there anywhere that you stayed more than one night, or was it just one night each place?
Just one night each place. Emily, if you could have stayed a second night in any of the places we were, what would have been?
That's an amazing question. I think I would like to maybe have stayed one more night in Oregon, maybe somewhere else. Or, actually maybe in that Crater Lake area. That was really cool, just to give us more, another opportunity to go like hike or see somewhere else around there. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
There was
What
a
about
place,
you?
it was our second night in Wyoming. So the first night, we were calling it Dubois, and then we saw a postcard that said Dubois.
Yeah.
So that set us straight. But so that first night was the Piece of Heaven, and then the second night at the western end of Wyoming was Dubois, and that was one of the instances where we stopped earlier than we normally had, like probably around like 4 p.m. versus driving all the way until like 7 or so.
Yeah.
And we got to explore the town a little bit, and just having even those few extra hours, I kind of had that feeling of, like, oh, if we were here another night, we could like travel a little bit farther out of town and maybe like do something that is a little bit off of the main road that could be really cool, and then just like have the ability to come back, take our time. So I feel like that could have been fun anywhere, but that is, I think, one of the places that comes to mind of where I sort of had that feeling.
Yeah. I hope you guys do go back and visit and spend some meaningful time there. That's awesome.
Oh, I would for sure go back to that area. They had, a sweet little cowboy cafe.
And And there was a coffee
and like
shop.
that yes.
The coffee shop, do you remember? In the morning, there was, Emily and I went to this coffee shop. Full transparency, we just like needed the bathroom. So we were like sitting there with our coffees, just like waiting until we needed the bathroom before we took off again. But while sitting there, there were a ton of people that came in that were just like local residents of the area. And like there was a little article hanging on the side of the coffee counter about the owners of the place and how they had just bought it maybe the previous year, and we're really trying to like provide a place for this town like that was sort of community centered. And you could just tell like people would walk in and be like, hey Charlie, like how's it going with the
I love that,
like new deck or whatever.
Like, yeah, they were asking about the new deck or how was your like fishing trip last week, like you know, they've been keeping in touch often. And it was the first day of school, remember that?
I didn't.
It was the first day of school, at least for the kindergarten, because I had seen a few moms just chatting about you know, how there were tears letting their kids off to at least kindergarten was starting. That's what I heard.
That sounds about
But
right.
I just was like sitting there watching this whole community, like, you know, what's going on? Like, what's the buzz?
And I feel like just traveling on the road like that through these towns that are on the main road, and probably like more than 60 or 70% of the traffic that goes through there is people just passing through. You don't always get
you don't always get to see
or get that sense of like, what is it like to live here? Or like, what do the people that live here all the time like, what do they do? What do they think about all these people like just passing through and like taking pictures of their town and then leaving?
Living in a city, like you expect that stuff, but you know, these towns that are at the front of these national parks and these remote places, they are quite small. They're very small. So it's got to be a different experience, though. A lot of the same tourism. That's interesting. So a few more questions. What would you do differently looking back? Is there anything? And then also, is this a trip that you guys would take again? Based on Emily's face, I don't know.
I would absolutely take another trip like this. Going out west, there was something so different, and it was so cool to experience, especially coming from the Midwest, going through you know, prairies, like you know, nothing extremely exciting at first, but then as you start to get out west, like when you know, it starts to just totally change, like when do rocks all of a sudden like pop up? And that's how I felt, like at least in South Dakota. That was crazy, just all of a sudden like there were the Badlands, you know. And just how nature is just changing completely all around you. And even then when we got to the coast, the smell and the air felt different. Like it was just, I like that experience altogether. And the only thing I'd change is just maybe make it a little bit longer, and maybe throw in like what we were just saying, like stay in a place more than one night. That would be like my only change.
Yeah.
That's good. Sounds like it's good if that's your only change. What about you, Hannah?
I mean, to answer the second question first.
Yeah.
Also, I would definitely do another trip like that. I'd probably next time like change up the route a little bit to go, you know, assuming time and resources allowed. But I'd love to see more of Oregon, go up into Montana. But at the same time, like, I mean, there's that urge to just like see everything and like you know, hit a different spot every night, or each time you do a trip, like change the route a little bit. But I also kind of agree with Emily's sentiment of, if you have the time, just exploring what benefits there are of staying in a place more than one night and getting to do a little bit more, learn about a place a little bit more in depth versus just like laterally exploring a new area each night. I think that could be really fun.
The trip, it sounds you guys made the most out of this trip, but it still was a means to an end. You were just trying to get home.
Right. Yes. And we had like a date that we needed to get back by. So, which I think most people do when they go on trips. So it's like hard to say that like, oh, next time we'll just have limitless amounts of time. I would maybe do a little more research into the places where we were going to be passing through, or like places to stop, because sometimes it would just kind of come down to the moment, like, well, this seems like it could be cool, we just found out about it like 30 minutes ago, do we really have time? And then kind of having to make that decision in the moment. Like, I think a little research on the front end would alleviate some of that decision making pressure.
And there's something really fun about spontaneity in travel, but like, I don't know, there are just pros and cons to both. There's also a lot of benefit in making a plan and having, specific, doing the research, like you said.
Right.
When
absolutely.
I backpacked,
and I do think
no,
I want to hear this. Don't worry about mine.
I backpacked Europe with my brother in college, and we didn't do camping, but it was a similar thing where we were sort of like, let's just see where the road takes us. And that had repercussions, and it also had a lot of benefits,
I think your mindset though around, not to get like too ethereal with it or anything, but I think that can be just as fun if you're like open to seeing the advantages of traveling that way, whichever way you decide to do it. Like for me, I think if I'm trying to be a little more spontaneous, like I need to really mindfully let go of expectations. And then just be open to enjoying whatever experience unfolds, versus like, oh, well, if we had booked this site in advance, like we this could have gone this way. And then making sure you're not getting stuck in the like woulda, coulda, shouldas. We also should have brought some better road snacks.
Oh yeah, sure.
By the end, I think we tried to limit the amount that we had, because we really were trying to use like meals as our opportunity to stop and like get out of the car and explore a new place. So we, I think, tried to keep our snack options like somewhat nutritious and like limited. But I remember a few times towards the end, especially, I was like, I cannot eat another rice cake with peanut butter, or like another plain apple. Like I need to get a little more creative,
like chips,
like a cookie. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, I think one thing that is interesting about your experience to me is that I don't know, I'm interested that you guys were able to have this spontaneous trip in the midst of all of this, but also I feel like that's sort of going to be the norm. I feel like we kind of have to get used to that for the near future,
Yeah, I think it's such a huge, like, to me, I can't ignore the fact that it is such a privilege to be able to like travel like that, and
for sure
travel spontaneously without, I mean, there's a level of caution for sure that's required for like me driving back from LA to Chicago alone, as a woman, and for Emily and I, even as like two women, like there's just a lot of things you have to be mindful of and aware of, and cautious about, but also like we really just the time available, the resources, like having that app where, you know, we probably seem like non-threatening people, you know, like so we didn't run into issues with like hosts accepting our last minute requests,
Right.
and I am aware that that could be like a totally different experience for people.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Really, I remember thinking so much about this when we were actually just driving and through specific towns. Just like I felt like really aware that we could so easily like blend in, or just like, you know, we looked like everyone else. And other than maybe getting a funny look because like we're the only ones wearing a mask, like that's it.
Like that
That's
was
all,
the thing that set you apart.
you know.
Yeah.
And I like right after we had just gone on that trip, I had a friend of mine from college post on Facebook, like, does anyone know a safe place for like a queer identifying Black woman to go camping or hiking? And that was just like, it wasn't something that had to cross our minds when we like wanted to park the car and like get out and maybe go hike or walk around. Like no one questioned that. And it was such a privilege, and we had the time off, and Hannah was so like amazing to like share that car, and you know, and the fact that we could just like make that happen so easily for the most part. And kind of like last minute, like we were just saying.
No, I
Very
think
lucky.
it's important to point out that element of privilege, because it's true. I don't have to think about that stuff either, and so I don't, honestly, it doesn't cross my mind a lot of the time. But yeah, important to talk about. So can you give me a rough estimate? I'm just curious. With gas, with snacks, with food, with campsites, how expensive was the whole trip?
Well, gas would definitely be our biggest cost. I wouldn't even have to look at the receipts to tell you that. My car is just this humongous gas guzzling machine.
Too cheap.
It is. So gas would definitely be the most expensive. And then food probably, I would say the cheapest line item of our whole experience actually would have been the campsites.
Oh, cool. Gotcha.
I think, I mean, a lot of the places we booked were like in the $10 to $15 a night range.
Awesome.
Which is like sort of on par with a lot of the national and state park fees.
Whereas motels just across the board would charge you more than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. But just to be clear, I think ours were so cheap though, because we put very minimum like amenities.
Sure.
Yes.
Because
we
you
just
could
needed
get
like
really nice places.
You could argue that we overpaid for pitching our tent on a spot of grass. Like you could argue that should be free, and like we're not going to go into that, but like how crazy
but it
was
also
Go ahead, Em.
Oh, well, sorry. I was just going to say, but if you're like looking for places with like showers, or there were even like places to swim, like you could click all of these things. And I bet it would still, like if you're going on like a family vacation or something, I think it would still look very affordable. Like an affordable option for that, if you had an RV or something. I think Hip Camp for sure is like, it makes it doable.
That's awesome.
I'm just trying to think of like, just for a breakdown. So we were like on the road for 6 days and definitely would have had to like fill up the tank every day. I don't know, maybe somewhere between like 500 and 600.
Okay. Yeah.
Bucks.
By the end of our trip, we had a ton of like gallons of water. Like we were going to bring it back to recycle and stuff, because that added up. It really did. And that shocked me.
It did. And actually Emily, now that you say that, I don't know if there's a way to do this differently. Like I would love to look into that more, just to travel with a little bit more of a sustainable like water plan, so that we're not just like racking up all of these big empty bottles, plastic bottles.
Yeah, especially because the soda fountains aren't really an option anymore.
I know, and that was kind of like I didn't recognize at the time like a safer alternative. And I mean, I've been feeling that way a lot lately, is like seeing how much we are sacrificing like environmentally friendly habits for the safety right now. Like with the bags at grocery stores, and
we are having to sacrifice that, which is, I'm hoping we find some balance there. So yeah, so something to think about is sustainable water. That's a good point to make. But aside from that, yeah, you guys felt safe at cafes and stuff, and you might have been laughed at for the masks, but that was the worst of it.
Yeah, our egos survived.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Yeah, we found it quite easy to dine outside. It was still really nice weather, and patios were open, because I don't think we ever went inside other than that cafe to charge.
Yeah, this will be interesting because, again, this is super doable in summer. It's not so easily located in the cold weather. So
unless you're going
unless
south.
you have an RV, you have an RV
or
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago is already experiencing that right now with like, patio. It's not patio season here anymore, and everything's going indoor, but we're put down on another lockdown. So
yeah, no, I living in California is a huge privilege in this area, because I'm going, I don't even think about the fact that in winter everybody's going to be stuck again. God.
And hopefully California we don't get more fires here where the air quality keeps people inside.
Keeps you inside.
Yeah, I miss
every state's got its own.
Yeah. Its own worries to
its own glaring reminder of environmental.
I was gonna say, and like people in Louisiana with like the storm coming in.
It's
totally.
Oh god. Well, that is a upsetting note to end on, but
I was like, maybe I shouldn't.
No. I think it's Mother Earth just being like, hey, you can enjoy everything I have to offer, but you gotta take care of it.
Yeah.
Take care of me. Exactly. Well, I was gonna say, if anything, I could try to end this on a good note with the announcement that I've recently just put in an offer for a 2004 Airstream Bambi, so that I can hitch it to an SUV and continue some cross-country road trips.
That's so cool. I'm so glad that you said that.
So I will make my way out west to you ladies, and I can pick you up. It sleeps 4.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. No, I'm like legitimately excited about this. Please keep me updated.
I think I'll be like telling everybody. I just found out yesterday, so I was like, yes.
That's
So
awesome. I love it.
I think that definitely answers your question about would I do it again, because this past trip has truly inspired me.
I love that. I think it's so cool that you guys did that. Thanks so much for talking to me about it.
Thanks for giving us a chance to yet again like recount the most exciting experience of the past 8 months.
Sure.
Truly. Yeah. Thank you for having us.